Hey, Facebook lovelies. Praise the Lord. This is your girl, Epiphany Tanya. Just signing in, popping in here because I wanted to do another video about, gotta fix myself up. This is one of those days, but anyway, wanted to do another video about writing and, as usual, I want to share a little bit from my book. Woo! My book, Misunderstood. Misunderstood. So I wanted to share a little bit from that book as an example of different writing techniques and things you can do to make your book kind of stand out and pop and pull your readers in and spark their interest. I think the last video I was talking a little bit about dialogue. Dialogue can be very difficult. I find it to be one of the most challenging things in book writing, is dialogue, because especially if you're writing fictional, trying to make the dialogue realistic of things that people would really say. Or another thing that people don't realize about dialogue is that there has to be some kind of conflict in the dialogue in order for it to stand out or pull your reader in. That just made me think about reality TV and how much conflict there is. And that's why we love it so much, because they're always arguing. But it's like, if you think about a dialogue where it's just like, hey, so-and-so, where you going today? Oh, I'm going to the store. Oh, that's nice. And yeah, let's go to the store. I want to go to the store with you. Like, how boring is that? It's just like, if the other person is just agreeing with them, yes, no, it's nothing there that pulls you in. But if you have a dialogue where there's some type of conflict, if there's one person has a goal and the other person has a different goal from that person's goal, and then you bring them together in a conversation, that's what we like to hear and see. So I wanted to use, and I think in one of my previous videos, I said that I was going to read from Misunderstood. I was going to read a chapter that talks about, when this main character, wonder who that is, Toya, when she actually saw someone get shot. So the title of that chapter, so it's chapter 10. Chapter 10, I don't know if you can see that. Hopefully you can. Chapter 10 is called Gunshots and Go-Go Spots. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to get comfortable here. I hope you guys enjoy this video and this section I want to read for you. But I just wanted to show you some aspects of dialogue and how you can use it in your story. So, gunshots and go-go spots. The gunshot sliced into the night air like the sound of a judge gavel hitting a court bench or two cinder blocks being banged together at full force. Crossing the street in the middle of Lancaster Avenue, Toya almost stopped short in her tracks when she heard the shots. The loud, unexpected sound caused her to flinch instead before continuing in a hurried fashion across the street. She barely looked over her shoulder to see the confrontation in the doorway of the strip club known as Rock's Lounge. She had just left there not even minutes before. She had just stepped across the same threshold of the entrance where two men now stood, one holding the gun to the other. Earlier that night on the phone, she had pleaded with her best friend, Ami, to pick her up from the club when the night ended. Ami, you know I need you to come pick me up from the bar tonight. China, he referred to her by her stage name. You know I can't do that. Why not? You know I'm going to need a ride. How am I supposed to get home tonight? Just take a cab, Ami replied. Oh, yeah? And just when am I supposed to do that? You know when you try to reserve it, they never show up. You know I lost my cell phone, and Queenie doesn't let the girls use the bar phone. Besides, what cab do you think will be going by there at 2 a.m. when I get off, said Toya. I'm sorry, China. I'll try to get off work, but I really don't think I'll be able to. I'm sorry. Don't bother, said Toya, slamming the phone down in a huff. It was at times like these that Toya told herself she was going to cut Ami off. She was angry, and when she needed him the most, he wasn't there for her. Somehow, though, Ami always found a way back into her good graces. It was hard for her to stay mad at him. Ami was a big guy who Toya referred to as her big soft teddy bear. He was like the brother she never had. However, secretly and recently, more openly, Ami had expressed his interest in Toya, or China as he called her. He had carried a torch for her ever since they met 2 years earlier. His feelings for her had grown strong for those 2 years, even after all the signs were there and her girlfriends kept telling her that he had a crush on her. Toya just couldn't let herself go there. She still hadn't fully gotten over Henry, the love of her life and Ami's friend. She and Henry had dated for close to 7 months. In that short period of time, he had practically moved in with her, and at some point they talked about marriage. It had devastated her to learn a few months after they had broken up that Henry had started dating another dancer at Rock's named 22 Caliber Pistol. It was even worse when she learned that Pistol was 3 months pregnant, putting her and Henry together sometime during his and Toya's relationship. Toya sat back and weighed her options: not go to the club tonight and miss out on the money, or take her chances and hope to get a ride from someone there. She decided to take her chances as she jumped up and got ready. Her Plymouth Duster sat broken down in front of her door. Since it cost more to fix the car than what it was worth, she was stuck taking the bus, bumming rides, and hailing cabs to get around. She headed out into the cold night air with her dance bag in hand. She absolutely hated taking the bus to work in a strip club. Even though she wore her street clothes, she couldn't shake this feeling that everyone on the bus knew where she was going. She imagined that this must have been how small-time drug dealers must feel when some big-timer rides past them in his even bigger, more expensive car. They had to feel gypped. There were so many girls in other bars that made money. Toya couldn't figure it out. She was tall, 5'10", slim, chocolate brown complexion, and referred to as pretty. She had long since outgrew her awkwardly ugly duckling stage that plagued her in her younger years. Yet, there remained some women who made more money in the night than she did in a week, and they didn't possess half of what she did in the looks department. Her former dance manager summed it up for her in one word: game. He explained that these other women had the gift of gab. They knew how to sweet talk the guy to get him to come out of his pockets for them more than she did. Toya pulled her weight, but in the 4 years since she started working at Rock's, her $150 she had been averaging a night was more and more looking like $100. She couldn't help question, was she losing her touch? All of a sudden, it was like she had to work that much harder just to get that 100. She used to make $150, then still have enough energy to go to an after-hour spot and pick up the other $200 to reach the $350 for the night. Of course, those were the days of her being under a dance manager. G schooled her in the go-go dancing business and motivated her to make the money. He didn't have to teach her much else since dancing came natural for her. But how to get the guy to come out of his pocket was an art form all its own. Even though G had taught her plenty, it still wasn't enough. Besides, she was getting a little older now. When she started out, she was 19, but now, almost 5 years later, she was getting worn out by the fast life. She didn't have much savings, and she really didn't consider the $1,000 she had stashed back in her apartment much. For all the money she made, she spent it faster than she could keep track. Being a stripper required a certain lifestyle. For this reason, she never could really save. So guys, I'm going to jump over to the actual, because I realize it's a lot in here that she goes back. She has some flashbacks. That's another thing I did with this book. I did flashbacks, almost like a movie, where she flashes back to like things that led her to this lifestyle where she's dancing in the club, including being put out the house by her mom, who was abusive to her. But I want to go to, let me see, because it seems like it's another part that is relevant. Oh, goodness. Okay, because she knows the shooter. So let's say. So anyway, so she gets to the nightclub. She gets to the club. Says once Toya got there, the night seemed to progress like any other. She came in, got dressed, and picked out her music to get ready to get on the stage. She worked the crowd, a room full of drunk guys ranging in age from the fresh-faced young 18-year-olds still wet behind the ears and giggly at the excitement of seeing half-naked women, to the oldest grandpa that really should have been ashamed that he was in there and not home somewhere tucking in his grandbabies, reading them a bedtime story. Instead, he was out almost 2 a.m. in the morning trying to get a lap dance. Toya just shook her head at all the old men that came into the club. It didn't stop her from taking their money. Toya ordered her usual round of drinks. She had to stay drunk, at least with a buzz, in order to do her job. She went through the rounds in emotion, collecting her tips before changing and coming back out to solicit guys to get personal dances. The night wasn't really all that unusual. When it was over, all the girls paid Queenie, the bar's owner, their standard $17 house fee that she charged the girls in order to work in her club before filing into the dressing room. Toya had seen Ice, her ex-boyfriend, in the club that night. Of course, she wasn't tripping because she and Ice had been over for years. She met him when she was just 16 years old, and they had a secret small fling. She and Ice had a history that went back. He knew personal things about her that she didn't want getting out. Things like her past and her mother's abuse. As it turned out, Ice was dating a bartender and former dancer named Sandy. Sandy sat on the metal frame chair with leather cushion in the dancer's dressing room. Toya, aka China, had just walked in as Sandy was getting dressed to do a set on stage. Tonight, Sandy was going back and forth, doubling as a bartender and stripper. Sandy was a big chick that liked to play hard and put on a show like she was tough. Toya figured her for a fake wannabe tough girl. Somehow she found out that Toya and Ice dated and almost blew a gasket. Sandy flipped out on Ice. In order to appease her, Ice had down Toya. He said that you were just some bum chick that he had to give clothes to, Sandy retorted to Toya, referring to her new boyfriend and Toya's ex. The conversation was a continuation of the previous night when Sandy had first learned that Ice and Toya had dated. The statement Sandy made caused a vein to pop up on the side of Toya's neck. Her jaw clenched shut and she spoke through pursed lips. He said, "What?" She almost mumbled under her breath, "Do I look like some bum chick?" Toya replied, referring to her expensive clothes, hair, jewelry, and newly manicured nails. Sandy sat quiet in response. "Wait till I see him tonight, Toya. I'll show him." Thought Toya, "I'll show him, bum chick." She considered what choice words she would use to make Ice feel as small as she did in that moment. Even though he hadn't been the love of her life, she was still hurt behind Ice's words. The attraction between them was mainly physical, but up until that point, Toya had considered Ice, along with all the guys she used to hang with, really good friends. So this next section, she goes into how she met Ice and like this mutual friend that they have, and she was actually staying with this guy, and Ice was a friend. They all partied together. So I won't read you all that. You can get the book for yourself. But I want to get to the gunshots. So Rox lets out. The club let out at the usual 2 a.m. time, and Ice stood in front of his Jeep waiting for Sandy outside. Toya was angry over the comments relayed to her by Sandy that Ice, her ex fling, supposedly said. Toya contemplated walking right up to him and giving him a piece of her mind and for calling her a bum chick. The past was one thing that Toya, who was now known as China, had a reputation to uphold. I'm sorry. The past was one, and like that caught me off. The past was one thing, but Toya, who was now known as China, had a reputation to uphold. She knew Ice had only said those negative things about her to try and impress his new girlfriend, Sandy, but it didn't take away her rage towards him. Toya was almost at the corner, a few feet from the club's front door. She could see Ice from where she stood, and it would have only taken her a few steps before she would have been in his face. Just when she started to head in his direction, she heard a still small voice that stopped her. "Don't say anything to him. Leave him alone." Toya wasn't used to hearing this voice, but it was clear, distinct, and strong. It wasn't just a voice either, but it was a feeling that enveloped her whole body and being that made her decide against confronting Ice. It was at that very moment One of the other dancers yelled at her from across the street and asked her if she needed a ride. Instead of confronting Ice, Toya decided to walk across the street to where the two dancers and their driver stood outside their car. She was in the middle of the street when the gunshots rang out. Toya turned to see the gun in Ice's hand and Tom, the hat guy, holding his stomach. Even behind his large, oversized down jacket, Toya could see the blood that slowly leaked through Tom's white shirt into his hand. Blood seeped through his fingers and onto the ground. Ice turned on his heels and headed back to his vehicle where Sandy was standing. He yelled for Sandy to get in before they both jumped into his Jeep and sped off. Max, Queenie's husband, went to get Tom a towel and someone went to call the cops. Toya seemed to stand there in shock at first, as if she didn't know he had been shot. Toya couldn't believe her eyes. She couldn't believe that someone she once knew and cared about could be capable of such cold-blooded, vicious acts. What's more, she couldn't believe that she was ready to walk up to him and tell him off just minutes before. At that moment, she realized it could have been her across that street with the bullet in her. Woo! I'm telling you that. I'm all excited like I ain't write that story right there. So anyway, so that's just one example. That is called Gunshots and Go-Go Spots, Chapter 10. So that's like almost towards the end of the book. Yeah, I'm sorry I gave y'all that much at the end, but but it's a lot of good stuff in this book. I thought that was just a good example of some dialogue that I put in there. It wasn't a whole bunch, but it was some dialogue between her and Ami, her best friend, and a little bit of dialogue between her and Sandy, the other dancer. So when I was talking about in the other video about giving your reader some variety and something to pull them in, so just not all narration. I do actually have a lot of narration in this book. A lot of the tips and techniques I learned after writing the book, so that future books I will have more dialogue in my books. But you know, I did give you some dialogue. I gave you the other part was narration, kind of changing it up a little bit for your reader, keeping them interested, keeping them pulled in, keeping them engaged, keeping them, you know, up with the characters. And so I hope you guys would you know, get this book and just read more and find out the whole story of what happened, you know, once she sees that and he runs off. So Ice flees the scene, and so they're looking for him, and you know, all this other stuff that happens in this book. So you guys tell me what you think. Comment below, message, inbox. Let me know what you thought of Misunderstood. That's one aspect of the story. I wanted to do two because I wanted to show an example of description. So like I was saying in the previous video about making sure you're using a lot of descriptive words, even if you have to get a thesaurus, whatever you have to do that brings in more description, because the more descriptive you are, the more you pull your reader in to be able to almost feel like they were there, to see things, to get a picture in their mind based off your words. You're kind of drawing a picture for them. So it was this one part that I had, and yeah, I'm seeing. I may just save this for the next part because I see like this video is going past the time that I wanted to do. But I'll save that for the next time. We'll talk more about the descriptive features. Maybe some, you've heard some of it in that part I read. You could hear some of the descriptions that I use about different things. I use a lot of analogies, that the gunshots rang out like a gavel being slammed on the court bench, you know, on the judge slamming the gavel. So that was just like a good analogy of what a gunshot sounds like, that bang, bam sound. So like trying to draw a picture, trying to give that reader that experience of being there, like you hear those gunshots for yourself type of thing. So tell me what you guys think. This is your girl Epiphany Tanya, author of Misunderstood, Sister Issues, The Marriage Purpose, and All the King's Daughters. Also Epiphany's publishing, consulting, coaching, promotional services that I offer now. So if you're an aspiring author, making some videos for you, some tips, some techniques, some strategies, and also give me a call, sign up for the service, inbox me, let me know, let me help you get your book out there on the market. Your book can be in your hand just like this one is in my hand right now. So anyway, so I hope you liked and enjoyed this story, part of the story. about the main character. Toya is her name. I wonder who that is. So it's loosely based on my life story, things that have literally happened, and turned it into, you know, something that hopefully you guys would be interested in. Like, I know you will if you just get the book. Just get the book and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's a good book. I got a lot of good feedback about this book, that people really enjoy it. So it's a nice twist at the end. She actually has a stranger stalking and following her, and it's a nice twist in the end because it gets revealed who this stranger is that's stalking and following her. So it's a lot going on in the story, and it kind of starts when she's young at 10. And so get the book. God bless you. Love you. It's nothing you could do about it. Go be great on purpose. This is your girl, Epiphany Tanya, and I'll see you guys on the next video.